In the grim darkness of the future, there is only war. And also the podcast known as
Trapped Under Plastic, the mini painting podcast that's 94% about spider-infested nutsacks and Chick-fil-A sauces.
Nice reference.
Yeah. What if the nutsack was filled with Chick-fil-A sauce? And that was where the spiders are birthed.
What if the spiders had nutsacks and their nutsacks are filled with Chick-fil-A sauce, like an incubation liquid?
Yeah, like that's how they had to milk the Polynesian sauce, is straight from the Spidey sacks.
You go on Chick-fil-A's websites and it's like straight from the Polynesian spider's nutsack.
Little did you know that you've been dipping your nuggies in that spider jizz this entire time.
No, spider jizz came out. We're only 1 minute in.
In case you were worried that the podcast was going to go all down the shit when we go to virtual recording, that's still to be determined, but you know.
Yeah, we have a whole 2 hours to mess this up. Like, let's not promise anything yet. But yes, we are fully virtual right now. Last week we did an episode with a guest in my basement, and this time we're testing out what it's like to do a virtual podcast with some new softwares. Let us know down in the comments after you watch this episode what you think of this format and how we did.
Yeah. We expect nothing but the most critical, this sucks balls comments. So let us have it. But honestly, we are looking for real, your real honest feedback. What our plan is, and we're actually going to have another live guest episode, I think next episode. So we'll be back in person there. But we're going to want to do enough of these virtual episodes for us to get a sample size and for you to get a sample size to really feel like, can we work this in? Can we keep the groove? Can we get used to it? And then how does that compare? So we want to grow that enough. And so then hopefully with your help, we'll find out the future of what our recordings will look and sound like. But it kind of looks like we're already sitting in these little chairs anyway. Look at it.
Yeah.
With our video watchers, we actually looks like we're sitting in our chairs. You totally couldn't even tell. They couldn't even tell that we're not in person. So.
Yeah. If we hadn't said anything, no one would have known. And to keep that facade going, let's jump into the Preamble Ramble. How often do you, as an adult, assemble Lego kits, John?
I used to quite a bit when my daughter was into it. I assembled like almost every one of the Harry Potter ones with her, and I was more excited than she was. Yeah.
Nice. So for my 12th year anniversary, Amber bought us both a Atreides Lego ornithopter to assemble, and we just started putting that bad boy together yesterday, and it's awesome. Like the wings articulate, like the leg thing. It has like a stand where it can be like in flying mode or like sitting on the ground mode, and like the mechanisms that it uses to allow that to happen and to like lock in place and unlock in place are like freaking incredible. Like they're super amazing.
Yeah, that kind of kit, it makes me wonder like how with the level of engineering that the people that work at Lego that design these kits, it's absurd now.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I can't wrap my mind around how you guys figure this shit out, how to make everything, all the articulation. And that's not even getting into the robotics. I know when I worked for the hospital and I worked with the student outreach programs, one of the things that I did was work with local Lego leagues. And that's typically middle school aged kids where they have their Lego leagues and they compete and they've got to build and all this stuff. And these dudes, like these like 6th and 7th graders, I was like, you have to explain this to me like I'm dumb because I don't understand how any of your stuff works here, but I am so impressed. So, yeah. What are you going to do when you get it done? Where are you going to put it?
I feel like it comes with all the casts that are like in the movies. So you get like a little Paul Atreides, you get a little Jessica, you get, Vladimir Baron Harkonnen and all these people. And so I am at the same time, I'm setting up a movie room in this new house. Maybe have like a little shelf with like a ornithopter and like all the characters like kind of displayed as some tchotchkes there.
Are you going to have the movie posters? Are you going to do that?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm definitely going to do movie posters in the room. I have a set of Lord of the Rings posters for all 3 movies that are awesome. I have an awesome Witch poster that I really love, the horror movie, and I would love to get 3 for all 3 of the eventual Dune movies that will exist once Messiah is out. But yeah, definitely.
Okay. Are they like these like fancy aftermarket movie posters? Or are they like legit, like this was at the marquee, what it shows when you'd walk to the movie theater?
No, they're like fancy aftermarket ones that like
Okay.
are limited edition releases and stuff like that from a website called Mondo. Have you ever heard of Mondo?
I haven't.
Yeah, they
but
make
now I
like
kinda
action
want to.
figures, records, like all kinds of collectible stuff. And I think they got their start with movie posters. And like they're really, really well done.
Cool. All right. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds like with the number that you already have and the trilogy of Dune you're looking to plan, like the walls are gonna be a premium space.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you're gonna run out real quick. So you better hope that you don't find any other movies you like for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that won't happen. Definitely not.
Oh man. I started this podcast on D&D with Vincey V, and it's called Fireball the Gazebo. To any of the goody peepees that haven't heard of it, if you play D&D or any RPGs, you want to check that out, please do. But it had an unintended consequence, Scott, and I feel like you're the person to talk to about this, not Vince.
Okay.
One of the things that I talk about is things that went well, things to learn from, things to try to figure out based on our ongoing campaigns. Well, now all the motherfuckers in my D&D campaign listen to the podcast. And so now podcast episode goes out, and then I go to my D&D session, and there's a 50-50 chance they're either pissed off at me or they've learned something from the show that they're going to try to like be all sneaky snicks in the session based on this hot goss information. And this is just not cool. My friends can't watch my shit anymore. I'm just not allowed.
They just ban their accounts on the channel. Good to go.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's banned.
I don't have a great answer for that question. Like I mentioned that one time when I like put like information on the backside of like a document that I like crumpled up and made to look like trash, and and Dan definitely listened to that episode and then like figured it out later on. So I'm not sure if it's a great solution for our very, very limited issue of being a podcast host while also being a DM.
Yeah, I never thought about that in the moment when you were telling that story, that Dan would 100% figure it out. I think it might have makes us think like, okay, I've got to do enough forward thinking of what I do and don't talk about, which is not one of my strengths. Usually it's just whatever's on the top of my mind, like the Polynesian sauce nutsack, like that. That's as far as I go. So
yeah,
I was really hoping that
tricky.
you could help me out with that, but no.
No, I got nothing. I mean, you could be like, hey, spoilers for any of my people in my D&D group. Like, don't listen to the next 10 minutes or like whatever. But like, I said that in the episode with Dan, and that motherfucker still listened.
Oh yeah, his ears were like, whoop. As soon as you said that, he's like, I am not stopping right now.
Yeah,
I am getting all the inside goodies. Yeah. All right. There was a video that was recently released by 52 Miniatures, and I want you to talk about it, Scott.
yeah, hell yeah. You're taking my Preamble topics. What's going on here?
I was on-ramping you. you.
Okay. Fair enough.
This is the power of double monitors right now. Usually
I know.
gotta look down at my phone to remind myself what we were going to talk about. Now I just fucking glance. It's so
Yes.
good.
Yeah. There's a Preamble Ramble topic about that exactly. Having a computer in front of me during the podcast, it's an awful thing. But anyways, yes, the video came out on 52 Miniatures called Brush Lickers Anonymous. It was a video that me and him co-wrote. It's a narrative short, and you guest appear in it. I'm in it. He's in it. A few of my friends are in it. Evan, the stream producer. But it's a funny comedic short about people who are addicted to the consumption of paint, like off of their brushes, specifically licking their brushes, and like going to an Alcoholics Anonymous style meeting. And we filmed it like, I don't know, like 2 years ago. Like whenever, like go back to the podcast episode where he is a guest. That was when he was in town, and like the approximate time when we filmed that thing, probably 2 years ago.
Has it been that long? It felt like it was last year.
I don't know. I feel like it was a long time ago, but he got it done, and it's hilarious. We did a couple rounds of editing to like tighten some things up and make some jokes funnier and stuff like that. And yeah, it came together shockingly well. Like one thing you're always afraid of whenever you shoot like some kind of narrative story video, is that when you sit down to edit it and you start piecing things together, it's like there are like just massive gaps in your story.
Yeah.
Like you need to like go back and film something, which happens all the time in Hollywood. Actually, they're called reshoots or pickups. And so that we didn't have to film anything extra, and I think there was a cohesive enough story for like the idea and the joke to land. So we'll have it linked down in the show notes and description below. If you haven't seen it, it's a goofy short that I used to like make those kinds of videos like back in the day, like with the Sam Lenz video where we're at the game store getting a lesson from him, like those kinds of videos. Check it out if you enjoy that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that style or the story told in that worked pretty well for not needing reshoots, because that's exactly what I thought about too, was like there might be these little gaps where you just need like a 5-second shot to bridge, things. But the premise was set up very early in the video, and so the audience is online with what the storyline is, and then you don't have to like pull it all together. It's just like, how can you like take them in different twists and turns on their expectations. My favorite part, because I wasn't there for the section of when you went to the source and Dan you're licking all the brushes in the store. That shot was so good. And then Dan has you in a headlock and leads you out. The best single shot of the entire video is where you're standing at the edge of the parking lot staring at the store, and then it cuts to a different scene of like you talking like in the group again, and then it cuts back to that same shot. That second hit of that shot of you just standing out there longingly looking 100 yards away.
Yeah, I know.
It's so good. The double tap of that was what really fucking killed me. So great job by both of you guys. I love that kind of stuff. I know it's one of those things where it's like niche, where it's like your core audience will really appreciate it, but it's not typically the kind of thing that will like reach out to the average gamer as much. But those that do find it, it's like one of those fun internet gems that you come across. So it's like, and it lives on forever. It's kind of cool that you guys have created this thing. It lives on forever. So props to both of you for taking the effort and time to make that, because I think it's pretty freaking sweet.
Thank you a lot. I think my favorite joke is the American Beauty reference of like Evan just like having paints and paintbrushes like slow-mo rain down on him, and he's like shirtless in bed stroking a giant paintbrush. It's just like it's so fucking extra. It's great. But no more of that.
You gotta go over the top.
Let's hear about your Nova prep.
Oh, dude. I have discovered that I'm going to have to pack extremely light in order to get the shit that I want to get there, because no checking bags. This is a no check bag zone. John doesn't check bags. And when I'm teaching class, I've had to like tightly pack all of my models. And the biggest thing that's really going to screw me is that your extra like personal item thing, which you typically bring a backpack and then you can just stuff it under the seat in front of you. I've got to have my carrying case for my giant rat as my personal item, so I don't get all that extra backpack storage, which for most people it's like, it's not that big of a deal. But I have to carry all of my medicine, and I have to carry a variety of snacks for low sugar with me at all times. And if I don't have that like with me in a backpack on the plane, it makes me like freak the fuck out. Luckily I'm traveling with Ginger Jesus. He's coming with me this year, so he has volunteered as tribute to allow me to pack a smaller version of each of those in his carry-on backpack. But I concocted this the system of getting the giant rat guy in my smaller display case, and he'll be traveling horizontally.
Ooh, gosh!
Right. So I'm drilling holes and magnetizing the bottom of his display base. I bought a steel roofing sheet, and I welded little hooks to it so it'll slide in the side kind of notches of that display case and hold it firm. And then I will magnetize him. He'll magnetize on the side there, and he'll float. And then I'm going to use the heavy duty poster tack around both the plate where the plate attaches and where it attaches. So it's like double duty. And then I have quilt padding as like this underneath in case there's any movement or whatever. He's there, but it's heavily reliant on that any of that flexing. Luckily, I used that whatever you told me to use to glue him down to the base. You told me something that's got more give.
Oh yeah. It's just any kind of epoxy is going to have more flexibility than like a super glue. So like a 5-minute epoxy or a longer one.
Yeah, 2-part epoxy. That's how I glued the rat to the base. Was 2-part epoxy. So it's not going to have that brittle connection. So we'll find out if that holds.
Yeah. Okay. And so remind me. So you put it in sideways because you are using an existing case to carry him, as opposed to like making one especially for him and your other bits, right?
Right.
Okay.
The thing is like even if I custom made one like all the European dudes do, like they refunction a wine box typically or something like that. He's so tall that he would have to go on his side under the seat in front of me anyway.
Oh, okay. Good point. Yeah, I was like, why don't you just use like a big vertical tall box, but then like to get under the seat, then it would be an issue.
Yeah. So even if it's like what I'm planning on doing, like when we went to, was it Vegas? I can't remember. One of the ones that we went to, or when I went to Nova before, I had to bring the same case. And once like we get in the air, I fucking put it on my lap the whole time anyway. But it's got to be able to stay sitting there horizontally for some at least small period of time. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I found it when I was flying on all my European flights. None of them ever cared if I had a bag in my lap and not under the seat in front of me. But every single American flight that I'm on, like a domestic one or one from America to somewhere outside of America, they all like harp on it constantly. I don't know if did you find that ever or no?
Yeah, they ask more questions and they're like, oh, what is that? Or, oh, what, and usually I found like if I explain them like it's fragile, it's an art piece for a competition. And I just, I feel much more safe with it on my lap, whatever. Then they didn't say boo, but I still think during takeoff, they have to follow protocol and everything has to be stored underneath you. So, yeah, we'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
Okay, on to the next Preamble Ramble topic for me. I just finished reading God Emperor of Dune, which is the one that features Paul Atreides' son, Leto II, as a giant worm god. That one was rough.
Is he a worm? Is he a worm?
Yeah. He's half worm, half person. Actually, I would say he's like 70% worm, 30% human. He's been alive for like 4,000 years or something like that. He's like, he can see into the future. He's got space eyeballs. He's a god, and whenever he talks, he kind of like is incredibly confusing, and that makes the writing very, very difficult to follow. So I actually am really liking the next book, which is Heretics of Dune, because there's no more worm god, because it's further in the future, so it's looking at a different like time frame of the Dune universe, and it's way easier to follow for me, and it's following cool characters that I'm like immediately interested in, and I'm actually really enjoying like the first 6 chapters of Heretics of Dune.
Wow. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, I know that worm god one is typically, from my understanding, and I haven't read it, was that where people are like hit the hard wall on the series and they're like, this shit has just gotten weird, and the assumption that is it will continue to go down that pathway, but it's glad that it does that it doesn't.
Yeah, actually it's a good point. Yeah, people would assume that, because like the first 4 are all kind of like that. Like the first one, it kind of starts to dabble a little bit, and then Messiah kind of has like Paul going off the deep end, and then Children is like having his children kind of go off the deep end of like godhood and weird things, and then like God Emperor is like just like that times 10. But then you kind of like, people all kind of go away a little bit, and so that kind of makes sense why it would be a little bit maybe easier to understand, but I'm not sure.
That is the exact opposite of the book series that I'm balls deep in right now, which is the Dungeon Crawler Carl series, which are fucking phenomenal. I just love them. If you want to like a quick break from the heaviness of the Dune books, just pick up the first one, ebook or something. If you're like, I just want something I want to read for fun when you're on a weekend trip or on a drive or something like that. And I hear the audiobooks, which are read by the author, are done phenomenally with as well. So, but yeah, it's so good. I'm almost done with the 3rd book, and it's just a page turner. So
awesome.
Last thing I want to talk about is I've been so busy with so much work with this project, this product that I'm bringing to market, And about this time this episode goes live, we'll start to be doing some previews or showing some examples. I'm getting some stuff in the mail by the printers for my color cards. And so I'm excited. I'll be sure to share that. But I completely underestimated how much work that this, as you probably know, when you bring a product to market, how much work it is and how you try to balance, like, I want it to be perfect. I want it to be everything the highest quality. It's not about making a ton of money and like my looking at the profit margins of everything as I've made decisions that go down and down and down. And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. But if you become so close to it that you're like, I don't have an objective view anymore. So I'm excited to get samples in hand and like let you see them, let the goody peepees see them, and get ready to the next step of filling out the entire process. I've been going around in my head about what to name these things too. I have a long list of names.
Okay.
I've just been calling them color cards, but
that's good. Like, I think during a project's inception, you always have just a project name for something, just so it's like easy and simple to refer to kind of while you figure out the rest of the stuff. I'm curious, how much does your audience know about this so far? Like, how much have you spoken about it publicly?
I've talked about it on my Patreon, and I've shown a bit of it to them, but that's about it. I have a kind of a social media roadmap of this. When everything is going to be kind of showcased and previewed and whatever. And I'm actually bringing samples to Nova. I'm going to have 600 cards as samples to give out to people. Whoever is going to have QR code on there for a pre-order. I'm going to, obviously, I already have a video on my schedule for 2 or 3 weeks, I think 2 weeks, where I'm going to use one of the prototypes and do a project with it to showcase that and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's going to come quick, and then we're going to have that pre-order window open where people can really kind of see what it's going to be, because I didn't want to talk too much too early to be there's the fear of someone's going to beat me to the market on this, because it just feels like something I really feel should exist, and I'm surprised it doesn't exist. So just nervous that I spent all this time and money on this thing, and then someone else is going to be like, it's the Green Stuffed World cards. Come get them at the Green Stuffed World website. That kind of shit. So
yeah, that would feel super bad.
Yeah. Well, I did have a name. I'm gonna float it out here.
Okay.
And I want Goody Peepee's honest feedback on this. Scott, on your immediate feedback. There is a very popular. Now, this isn't related to Dungeons and Dragons. However, it's a play on words that fucking works. Okay. In Dungeons & Dragons, there is a very iconic, long-lived magic item called the Deck of Many Things. Have you heard of this?
No.
It's a tarot card deck. It's been in every edition of D&D since first edition, I believe. And it's tarot cards, and you pull a random tarot card out of the deck at random, and it gives you the tarot card thing. And either something amazingly awesome happens to you or amazingly terrible happens to you, right? And so the terminology Deck of Many Things is just kind of like a cultural known thing. So I thought, what if I named this deck the Deck of Many Things?
Yes. I think that is awesome for people who get the joke. But if I'm imagining a product on a shelf at a store and it's called the Deck of Many Things, I don't know if that would just convey to me immediately what's inside of your box,
right.
But it is a great reference that should go somewhere on the packaging.
It goes, the name's so good. The other option was that's somewhat similar that in my brainstorming phase was the Deck of Many Colors. That's a little bit more on the nose of related to what the product is. It's a play on words that people maybe get or don't get. I don't think you need to get it. Understand its connection to Deck of Many Things for it to still kind of, it rolls off the tongue pretty well. Because everything else, I mean, I've got a list of about 15 of them. A lot of them are very kind of more crunchy, more ethereal, more of dealing with color and chroma and saturation, and then also dealing with imagination and, creativity and stuff, right? And sometimes that just felt like, God, this just feels douchey.
Like you're trying too hard or something like that.
I know, right? Yeah, and I'm like, it's not really on brand for me to to be very douchey. I don't know. I'm trying not to be anyway.
Oh
boy.
Yeah, I mean, those are fun. I love coming up with the names for things. Names for YouTube channels, for products, for D&D campaigns, for characters. I feel like there's so much fun in coming up with a clever name. So, yeah, I enjoy that.
Yeah, cool. Well, let's get on to our quick TUP partners. You know, we love our TUP partners. Our TUP partners love us, and no fault of their own. They're with us for good, bad, or otherwise. And so we're gonna shout out a couple people. I want to shout out the Army Painter. Here's a first TUP partner, and I'm gonna show on the screen right now, but our audio listeners, I'll describe it. These are the brand new speed paint markers come to us by Army Painter, and we talk about what we painted coming up in the next section. I'm going to talk about using these things and the surprising outcomes I had with them. They are brand new on the market, so take a looky-loo.
We also want to shout out Red Grass Games and their new R9 Solo desk lamp. A little bit of a smaller, maybe a little bit of a cheaper compared to their other more expensive desk lamp. Both of them fantastic light quality. Also from Red Grass Games, John and I both enjoy their painting handle. It's a wonderful ergonomic handle. It feels great. It rotates in the hand really nicely with a beautiful damped motion. It just feels good to paint with. Like out of all the handles that I have, that's the one I enjoy holding the most.
Yeah, at any time there's like, oh, I just dropped one. Like a half dozen of these on my desk that I have like various projects. I just fucking love them. Next one is Steamforged Games, and they are just launching the late backer kit for Wave 2 of their P3 paints. Make sure you check that out before you lose the opportunity to pre-order and get the best possible pricing. Important thing to note about this, because Steamforged Games such has great distribution channels set up, already Wave 1 of the paints that came out last year around this time are already finding their ways in stores. We have them in our local store, The Source. So if you want to back them, or if you want to just pick up individual ones, you'll be able to get them at your local store.
And lastly, we want to shout out Corvus Belli, makers of Infinity, super crunchy sci-fi skirmish war game. They also make Warcrow, another kind of similar game, but in a fantasy setting. Additionally, they both have new starter sets out right now, Sand Trap and Song of the Dormant. I think we just got past the pre-order period for Song of the Dormant. This might be hitting stores and online web stores pretty soon here. Outside of those games, we have Warcrow Adventures, more of a board game version of Warcrow. Aristea, which is an arena-based brawler. I freaking love arena-based brawler games, both in video game and board game format, so definitely check that out. And coming soon to the Infinity Universe is a racing game called Rem Racers that I actually saw at Adepticon one year. I don't know when it's going to come out, but I love the idea of that.
Rem Racers, when I think of Rem, I think of Rem sleep. So is this a racing game you can do while you're sleeping?
Okay. Not sure about that. We'll check the tape on that, but maybe.
That would be pretty sweet. You don't have any time in your day to play the games you love? Do it while you sleep.
Oh, my gosh.
Rem Racers, coming 2025.
That sounds like some dystopian future thing, which kind of works well for the idea of like infinity in that whole universe, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm drinking Alani cotton candy energy drink today, and I got to say, I was really nervous that this was going to taste like butts. And it mostly tastes like cotton candy, so I can't blink anymore.
Well, okay. Well, hold on. I thought that you got your fancy drinks when you drove to the studio and you just stopped at a gas station. Do you just have like a supply of fancy one-off drinks in your house?
Yes. No, yeah, that's a good thing to clear up. Maybe Goody Peepees thought that too. I don't typically stop at a gas station on the way up because we are timely and we got to make sure that we have plenty of time for rambling and shit in every episode. And if I'm getting up there like 15 minutes later every episode, that's 15 minutes less talk of Polynesian nutsack juice, right? These are the kinds of things that we need to make the time for. My hot tip is that I go to Costco and I just buy a random big pack, like a 36-pack or 24-pack, multi-pack of different energy drinks. And it's always really nervous because I'm like, I'm spending $40 and I don't know if any of these are going to be good, but I have to drink them all anyway. So in that case, there's like 12 fucking cotton candy Alanis. And luckily, this multi-pack has been bangers. So,
Okay. How many in each pack?
I think it's like 36 Alanis, and there's 3 different flavors. There's this one, there was a sherbet one, rainbow sherbet, which is fucking amazing, and then there's a blue raz snow cone. And I do not like artificial blue raspberry flavored stuff. Yucky. But when you put snow cone on the end, it's actually pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
So, if you guys go to Costco and you've been worrying, Milani's been staring at you, hashtag not sponsored by Alani, but we would be if they wanted to.
Yeah. I feel like it'd be fitting for our podcast to be sponsored by some kind of carbonated, caffeinated, cold drink thing. I feel like we both are consumers of that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. And if you really wanted this podcast to go to next level of unhinged, have Four Loko reach out to us to sponsor, and then we have to drink a Four Loko every episode.
Okay.
And that would be a hot mess, but it would be a fun burning dumpster fire. So,
all right.
Hobby update, Scott. What have you been working on in the hobby?
I've been working on my volleyball miniature war game. I actually just finished the video for it today, and I've never. So I read a lot of rule books. I explain a lot of games to a lot of people. And so I have very strong opinions about the formatting of a rule book and also the way to teach a game to someone. And this is the first time I've ever sat down and in a Google Doc have tried to write start to finish a version of a rule book. And, I got to take a step back here and apologize to all the rule writers out there. It's not easy, bro. It is not easy. You get into certain spots where it's like, okay, I'm starting to explain this thing. And it's like, oh, I need to. The person needs to have understood this thing by that point to fully grasp what I'm explaining here. So do I explain this thing before I get to this paragraph? Well, this thing isn't really important and relevant. It's kind of an edge case thing. Do I put it in like a little sidebar, a little blurb thing? Like how much I want to emphasize this? Like there's so many questions that come up that I basically just kind of gave up and was like, okay, it only matters that I understand the game fully, so that like when I show Vince and also Malev, who's going to show up next week, he's our guest in next week's episode, that like they get what I am describing and saying out loud. Like they don't got to read the book yet. So basically, I'm just taking current Scott's problems and handing them to future Scott, which is a strategy that I often employ.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you can't solve all the problems until they're absolutely in front of your face and you can't avoid them anymore. That is a tried and true method to run your own business. I have found anyway. I worry about it when I need to worry about it. Yeah, the fires at your feet are always more important than the smoldering things on the horizon. But I don't know if I can wrap my brain around how I would approach that, because it's an organizational tangled mess. And there is no obvious correct answer of the order of things. That's the difficult nature of it. And as we've learned from generations now of games, both tabletop games, board games, miniature war games, RPGs, all that kind of stuff, reading through as many as that I've read through over the years, there's no okay, this is the staple way to do it. I'm more of a fan of give me the quick start rules, right? Give me all the basics so I can feel a level of confidence without being overwhelmed to start the game. And then you have the in-depth advanced rules that come later. And so now that I understand the bump set spike mechanic and the defense mechanic or whatever, now it can get into the nitty gritty of the depth of it. And so they're like, oh, this game is fun and engaging and exciting just off the quick start rules. And now I don't even need to understand the depth of the swimming pool that I can jump into, but I know that it's there, and that gets me hooked to know that the version of the game that I'm playing at a basic level is fun, but I also know it has the depth that gives me the reassurance for long-term engagement in it. And so how do you do that? Good luck, Scott. But I know that that's the version of rules when I read them that gets me. You want to get to action as soon as possible, and then you want to show that it's more than just that first experience over and over again.
Yeah. I think the method that I enjoy is explaining how the game is won, and then explaining at an incredibly high level the steps you take to achieve victory. So it's okay, you win when you have more points than your opponent. you get points by doing this action. You do these actions at this stage in the turn. A turn looks like this. So it's kind of like everything kind of like hooks together, like kind of like, you know, a daisy chain, like logically. And so I often end up explaining games that way as well to people. But like my ultimate kryptonite whenever I'm explaining a game to someone is when someone's like, okay, we just need to play it to understand it. Like that to me is I've failed. I've failed in like conveying this game to you. So actually, it's funny we're talking about this now. I just played a new game called like Unlock. It's a what are they called? Like when you're in like a room and you got to try to figure out how to get out of the room.
Like an escape room?
Yeah, it's an escape room as a board game themed after Star Wars. And so that time, because that's kind of a rules light game, there's not a lot going on, I explained that game in a different way where I was like, okay, here's our total objective. Like, let's just get started. And then we like read the scenario for like what the situation we were in. Because like that requires no rules to kind of imagine a narrative, right? And then like the moment we encountered the first mechanic of the game, I paused the timer because it's like a timed board game, and then explained that mechanic, and then we kind of moved past it, and then just did that for the first 15 minutes of the game. And then we understood everything, and then it was a lot smoother doing it that way. And I think that works great for a game that's like not super deep.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if deep is what I would categorize it as, but sometimes there's just a level of almost like a social understanding of like. It's more easy to envision this real world scenario, right? Of we're in this room, we need to break out, you know, oh, we're wearing Star Wars outfits while we're doing it. Cool, whatever. But yeah, just like this, the premise is easy to grasp and most people can envision themselves in that situation. And then only when you bump into the rules do you figure out the rules. That's different than a lot of the games in like the miniature hobby that we're, you know, what we play. It's kind of the opposite. It's like, I need to understand the rules so I know how to act at all, you know. And I think an RPG is a closer example to what you're describing with the escape room kind of a game, where it's like you're in a situation. I'll describe you being in a tavern and these people are talking. You see a weird looking goblin in the corner, whatever. You don't need to understand the rules of the game and the dice rolling to just act. And then as you bump up to those, then you engage in the rules. So they're different kinds of animals. And I guess in some ways the depth of the rules and how well that those go multi-layers deep. You're right. It is more complex. All the volleyball rules are deep as the ocean.
Yeah. I'm hoping to not do that. The feedback I got from Vince was basically that I made a too complicated of a primary loop, the thing that the player does every single turn. It's too long and maybe too complex, and so it's going to make it a little bit harder to understand and really enjoy. And also, the more important portion of that feedback is basically just I did not allow enough space to add in extra fun things. You know, like there's a lot of nuance in volleyball, as there are on all sports. And I tried to bake a lot of that nuance into the primary loop. And so right now I'm pulling a lot of that out to make it simple. Like if you think of a miniature war game that's very common, like you roll to attack, you roll to hit, roll to attack, roll an armor save, roll some kind of leadership check. That is combat, like in a very simple nutshell. And now you have different kinds of armor, different kinds of attacks, different kinds of effects that affect the bravery of a model, different kinds of, that's how you add in the interesting stuff to make it even more exciting. So I'm trying to pare back a little bit at the moment to make it simpler so that I can then add that cool sauce on top.
Oh, I dig that. Yeah, that makes total sense. You want the simple dig, set, spike, that kind of holy trinity that you're working with of each of your turns to be able to be really basic and easy to understand, but there's a lot of depth to it and there's a lot of decision making you can make, but the simple 3-step process is quick on its own, no decision making, and really simple numbers and stuff, and stats of who you want to have your setter be and getting the ball to them so they're setting up a better set, and that adds their plus to set is higher or whatever, and that can set up a stronger spike and that kind of thing. And I love that. But that basic, I think he's right, having the basic steps can go quick, before you add in variables, and it allows you to add that depth later. Cool.
Absolutely. That's all I'm doing. What do you have going on?
Oh boy. So I've been painting with markers. I don't know where the minis went. So I tested out. I was like, all right, so there's enough of these markers that have hit the market these days. They meant to send you pictures, but we'll send them later, I guess. And so I painted 3 different Tyranids with 3 different sets of paint markers. So I tried the AK Interactive markers. I tried the aforementioned Army Painter speed paint markers. If you pull up my Instagram, my latest post, you'll see the pictures right now. And then I tried these cheap markers that I got off of Amazon that were like $13 for a 30-pack. And they were Amazon's #1 recommended when I was searching for the Posca. You know, if you're familiar with Posca markers, they're high-end artist alcohol markers. They have a specific line called the PCF 350. And these markers have a paintbrush tip. It's like, like a large paintbrush, like a size 5, I guess. If I'm looking at my artist opus on my table right now, they're slightly bigger, but about a size 5 there. And the cool thing about these Posca markers is they actually have a brush tip where it flexes and bends, and it covers really well. I can just paint my thumbnail like that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so these are high end, but the problem with these Posca markers is, and they even have a primer in the back, so you have to push the button in the back 2 times and shake them, and it primes to the tip. These Posca markers are give or take $12 a pop. They are expensive. They are fucking phenomenal. But I'm like, hey, I'm going to see what the Amazon recommended alternative is for the cheap Chinese knockoffs or whatever. And so that was the blue and kind of cream color one. But I fully expected this to be a hot garbage fire, this video. And I was surprised at the possible outcomes of the marker, specifically the orange one with the brown carapace. That is done with the base layer being the speed paint markers, and it's all wet blended with the markers live on the model. So the carapace is, I did a line of black, and then I took their leather color and I wet blended, started at the other side of the carapace shell. I moved into the black and I pulled it back out, just like you wet blend. I did the same process that you wet blend with a paintbrush, and it worked amazingly well because speed paint has a longer active time. And so I basically was able to base coat these models with more depth. The body is red closer to the shell, and then it's an orange speed paint as you get further away down the limbs and the tail and stuff. And it did the base coat and the shading all in one step. And then for these ones, I wanted to see just how far it could go, painting that one only with markers. There was no paintbrush used at all. With the other 2, I did a wash step because there's no depth, so I had to bust out a brush for that. But for this red one specifically, I just took the AK markers and I did fast edge highlights on that, and could even do the teeth and the eyeballs with those. So that model is 10-12 minutes for that red Tyranid with just markers. So,
okay. That's shocking. I saw the edge highlights, and I was like, okay, like, I'm imagining how these things works. You just, like, kind of douse the red, douse the brown, and then once they've kind of, like, washed into the recesses and kind of look like contrast paint, then you came back with a paintbrush and you edge highlighted the carapace in various areas. But I am pleasantly surprised to hear out that you did the edge highlighting on the carapace with one of those markers as well. And,
yeah,
like, you nailed it.
You couldn't do that step with the Army Painter ones because they're obviously speed paint, and speed paint's not going to give you, a crisp edge highlight.
Okay.
But the AK Interactive Real Color ones, those ones, they are very opaque. The best part about them, I think, when I'm trying to think about this is like, who's the user case for these products? It's for people that want to get their tabletop armies or something painted fast, but still be somewhat impressive, or they just don't want all the learning that goes along with learning a different tool like a paintbrush. And because most of us spent most of our childhood and adult life writing with a pen or a pencil, these are hard tipped. So your control and your understanding of the tool is innately higher than the average bear's understanding of a tool of a paintbrush. They just work differently. So I feel like if you know how to write with a pencil or a pen, your ability to do quick edge highlights with these is so much better. Now, the ceiling is much lower because they are not as razor sharp at their tips, and you really have to just barely graze the top of the model with them. So if you have any fat fingers or you can't get your hand-eye coordination perfect, it's not going to look as good. But those AK markers, they're like a layer consistency, right out of the marker. You don't have to worry about thinning. You know that it's going to show really well. Like obviously, like the carapace, the kind of bone color there, like it shows up really well, but it's not, over the top, ugly, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I found that if you were just going to do a contrast paint job for a marker, because the base coats of these these markers, the base coat step of these is not faster than using contrast paint with a brush. It's just not faster.
Same speed though, right? Not slower.
It's slower.
How's it slower?
It's slower because you can't slop these on. They have one speed that the ink releases from the tip, which is like, you think about this, if you load your brush, not overload it, but you load your brush with a, synthetic brush to put on a base coat. You push down your brush, and so it spreads out a little bit, and then you run a whole line, and so it conforms to the shape of the model, so you're covering more in a single brush stroke. That's not an option with these because they're a hard tip. So you have to go like you're using a Crayola marker over every little tiny surface, and it just takes longer to do a single coat as opposed to with a brush. So I think it's great for people that want to do the edge highlight step really quick with your army. I think it's great for teaching new people to paint and getting used to working with a small model before you graduate to paintbrush. I think it's great for teaching kids, that kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun, and it turned out better than I thought it would. So it was really an interesting experience for sure.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, if you had not told me you had painted these with colored markers, I'd have no way of knowing. Like, they look just like any other like nice model painted with a contrast paint with some like nicer detail work done with edge highlighting and recessed shading and washing and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't look like anything particularly like alien, despite the hormigons. But yeah, so I'm thoroughly impressed.
Yeah, and doing little like dots and patterns and stuff with these is really pretty simple, like adding some dots to the carapace and that kind of stuff. It was like, it's not difficult. So It's kind of nice because that can be a tricky thing with the paintbrush,
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Because the tip of the brush is not necessarily just like a dot shape.
Right.
It's like a point, and you have to kind of like paint a circle almost, which is bizarre. Yeah.
And when that brush touches with any pressure, it like splays one way or the other, so you lose your circle. Here, these don't. You could just press it down, and how lightly or hard you press it, you can create the circle of different diameters.
So there is some give, even though it's not a brush tip. There is, because it's felt.
Yes. Yeah. There is some give.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That's what I learned.
All right. Awesome.
I also, the other thing in my hobby update is I've been is the lack of progress, but just staring at my bust for. I've done a little bit of work on it. I've done some of the detail work on the chair that he's done. I've fucked with stuff with the cast shadows, and I actually had a good conversation about cast shadows and lighting with Eric Swinson. He was nice enough to reach out to me, and in the after party today, I'm going to disclose all of his secrets and see if your brain gets as jumbled and your eyes gets as crossed as mine did when having this conversation with him.
Okay, I look forward to hearing all that info. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
Let's do a mini painting critique, right?
Let's do it. Yeah, we have our patron DJ Tame. If you are a patron of the podcast, you get access to an extended episode that we call the After Party. We actually just added on to the podcast currently right now. And you get a few things for being a patron. You give the ability to suggest topics for us to go over, which we are going to do in this episode. You also have the ability to upload one of your miniatures so we can take a look at it and give you some feedback like we're doing right now for DJ. And you also get access to, the things you get access to in Extended Party are stuff we've learned and tried out, and also other people's paint jobs that we like and why we like them. So it's about 20 to 30 minutes extra content for you there. So let's get into DJ's Space Marine here. It's a Space Wolf. It's an Eradicator. He's got a big Melta, and it's painted in typical Space Wolf colors, it seems, with a kind of a light blue desaturated armor, black shoulder pads, and then typical gold and silver TMM.
Yeah, he certainly, it reads really well as a Space Wolf. So it's the first thing right off the bat that there's no miscommunication through the application of paint for that. I will say that the big thing that jumps out at me that I'm struggling with from the get-go, I know there's plenty of good things that are happening here, is the whole model seems dusty. Yeah. And I don't think, in looking around at the model, that it's dusty because it was dry brushed. Because when I look on the blue armor where he's making volumetric highlights in different places, it's not that he used a dry brush. It's maybe he did a dry brush step before that. But there's a chalkiness to this that is it makes the whole thing look, rough.
Yeah, I agree. I'm seeing it on like the black base coated shoulder pads. Like this kind of a bit more of a satin paint, and so with the light he's using for the photo, you can see kind of that rough texture. So to me, that implies that the texture might have showed up in the priming step,
yes.
which can happen, and that happens often. I think white primer is especially bad, but it can happen with black primer as well. Typically, you don't want to be too far away from your miniature when you're priming, because the priming particles will dry midair and then still have some tack to them, land on the model, and then create something of a physical texture. They might settle a little bit, but there will still be some remnant bumps that kind of just get further and further accented the more layers of paint you put on the mini. And then to further compound that issue, if it's a particularly dry day outside, then those particles are going to dry even faster. So you want to be kind of close. You want to kind of keep an eye on the humidity. It's not maybe that much of an issue with the humidity, but all those things combined together may create this effect.
Yeah. I really dig that he's gone with like a deep dark brown in the recesses of the armor, adding a bit more depth of color in those shadows and those connected panels adds this feeling of natural weathering, right? And I really dig that. It looks like he did that, added that part after he did all the blue instead of like working up from that base coat of the dark brown, which is absolutely doable. One thing that I would say, my small tip for when you did this step, is actually thin the paint a bit more than you did. There are some areas where it creates a hard line where it's kind of meeting the other parts of the model. And if you have it thinner, you can always go back in with multiple coats and it'll kind of conform like a wash to the line and pin wash there. So I always start a little bit thinner for that step, and I can always go through with 2, or I can add a little bit more paint to the mix to make it a little bit stronger if I'm not getting enough of that brown to show through. If you start too thick, it can make your life harder, and it's harder to run those smaller lines, and you'll get those kind of hard separations of brown stops immediately right next to the base coat blue.
Yeah, I agree. I actually really like that brown like undercoat or shadow in the blue armor quite a lot, and I would continue to use that. So this guy's kind of got a bit of a rougher like look to him, so maybe he's seen some battle, and I think to continue using that brown, you could take it and you could add it with a sponge to some of the edges of the power armor to give like a chipped armor look, which would kind of just further accent this kind of like rough, like kind of warrior vibe to him a little bit. So that might be a cool idea. And also I love when people paint like kind of all the smaller little details on the model, like, within reason, but like his forearm's got this kind of little panel on there. You got red in the eyes, you got yellow on the shoulder pad. Maybe that little panel right there is a good opportunity to reuse the red of his eyes and the yellow of the insignias on his shoulders and stuff like that again, but in smaller little accent colors. So I always like to do that with all the details on my minis.
Yeah, for sure. If you do that that kind of sponge stippling to create some more texture like Scott's talking about, which I think is a great idea, you do want to use a thicker paint probably straight out of the bottle for that, because you want one little boop touch of the model to create that like more obvious chipping, and then you can come back in with your brightest off blue color and kind of outline those a little bit to add some depth to them. I would like that brown to encase each of the rivets. That's a big thing, is like when you outline a rivet with that, It looks so goddamn good, and it starts to define even the smaller shapes really well. And then undoubtedly when you do those small details like the rivets with this brown, you're going to get too much of the brown on the peak of the rivet. That's perfectly fine. That happens to all of us, but it's a really easy fix. You just go back in with your highlight blue and retouch just the tip of the rivet, and then it pops like mad. So great stuff. I think this looks like, I love the different color shoulder pads with the yellow and the black. I mean, he feels really like a solid Space Wolf. I would probably do you could go like a black plus brown wash, mix those two together, and put that all over the silver of the gun to make that a heavier wash there, to kind of make it feel like it's fitting in with the kind of grungy look of the armor. That's another real quick step as well. But good stuff. I mean, you have a squad of these dudes together, and they're going to look badass just as is. So great job.
Yeah, totally agree.
DJ Diddles, you did it.
DJ Diddles!
All right, Scott, let's talk about our other TUP partners. I'm going to let you start off.
Let's do it, yeah.
Oh, is it supposed to be me? No, you. No, me.
I believe it's you.
All right, we're going to talk about Monument Hobbies. Monument Hobbies, we love their paints. They've got all sorts of great tools for the hobbies as well. They've had a recent marketing campaign of like their ultimate toolkit for miniature painting. They got some fun ads. I always love the Monument Hobbies ads. But they have a well-rounded suite of everything you need for the hobby these days, whether it's tools for cleaning your models, for clipping your models, for all sorts of different potions, for glazes, for washes, for all sorts of great stuff. We love them. Check out Monument Hobbies.
Next on the list of TUP partners is Game Envy. I know that John and I both like the Game Envy wet palette. I feel like that palette, for me, combined everything that I loved about the Masterson Stay Wet with a bunch of like cool, handy, modern features that are useful for the miniature painting hobby. So if you're in need of a wet palette, check out Game Envy.
I got mine right here. Look, I get to store my brushes and stuff in the lid too, and the little things. Those are great. Nice. Last but not least, we've got Cobalt Keep, and one of my favorite things every time I'd go up to the TUP podcast in person is I'd use my Cobalt Keep travel/display cases. I'm showing them on screen here right now. You got one that's great for a unit, a war band, whether you're playing War Crow, whether you're playing Kill Team. You can fit them all in here. Keeps the dust off them. They're magnetized, so your models stay nice and safe in transport. And then you can put them on your shelf when you're back home, and your models do not get dusty. I love these. They have both individual size and full unit squad size.
All right, that's it for our TUP partners. Now on to the main topic, which this time is kind of a couple of topics, and they're questions from you. We're going to answer some of your burning questions, starting off with a question about box art for display miniatures. Johnny, you want to read his question?
Yeah, this is by Matt Groff, and he's got a little premise here. And so we're going to start with the premise, and then he's got 3 individual questions in this meaty TUP goody pee question section for the podcast. Matt says, I've noticed that I'm often more drawn to miniatures without finished box art. An unpainted model just feels more exciting and full of possibilities. I love seeing the box art for new models, but I do think I'm slightly less inclined to purchase them, though I still do have plenty. Having painted display miniatures and developed your own, I'm curious how you both feel about this. Question number 1. How important do you think box art is for display miniatures? Do you think it influences people to buy a model?
Yeah. This is an interesting question, and one that I hadn't thought about until I think curtain engineer Jake first mentioned that seeing a model without a box art was actually preferential to him. That's every once in a while you have like a small worldview expanding moment, and that was a moment for me. I had assumed everyone would want to see a painted box art, but then I was like, okay, maybe I'm wrong about that.
If there's ever anybody that's going to open your eyes to the world, it's a curtain engineer.
Yeah, dude. Opening them curtains of the world, to everybody.
There's a story. I know we've told it before, but we need to do a quick rundown of this story so people understand Jakey Poo, why he's called the curtain engineer. So we were staying at Adepticon, like one of our first years at Adepticon, right? And we're all bunked up in one room, way too many sweaty men for one fucking hotel room.
Yeah.
And it was at nighttime or morning? Do you remember?
Morning.
It was morning.
Yeah.
And we had the curtains closed so we could sleep in after the sun came up. And it's the morning. It's still dark in there because all the light canceling curtains were closed. And Jake gets up in his little fucking underoos that he was sleeping in. And he's like, couldn't get the curtains open. And he was getting so goddamn pissed. We were still lying in bed. And he's like, how the fuck do you open these curtains? What, do you got to be a curtain engineer to open these things?
Yeah,
we started our morning laughing so goddamn hard, and since then, Jake has been dubbed the curtain engineer.
Yeah, rightly so. Yeah,
rightly so. And he's got opinions on painted box arts.
Oh, he does, and we do too as well. So yes. I think that for me, having a painted box art for your display model is just like a classic part of the display model like ecosystem. I don't know, culture, if you want to call it that. Like, I think it's just like it's a cool thing. And so, I've always, when I was first getting into painting models at a higher quality, I would like look at display painters as like some kind of like upper echelon of the hobby. I kind of wanted to be like I want to be a good enough painter for a boutique company to reach out to me to be like, hey, will you paint my model for a box art? Like that to me is like a sign of respect that you've made it, right? And so considering that, like, I want any model that I would make, I'd also want to kind of like pass that thing off to someone else. Now that's considering that, I've painted most of my own box art, so I don't know if I'm really passing it on really at all. But I do like that. I like, I'm not thinking much about the customer and the end user of the product in saying all of these things, but I think I prefer a painted box art considering those items, but not super important.
Yeah, I think it's there's like two sides to this coin is how I feel about it. I don't think the actual paint job for a display model for a box art is necessary. And I actually don't think it's very important to sell the model in terms of on their website, them showcasing this new sculpt, people seeing the value of it. And I lead back to good examples of this. Kingdom Death Monster. None of their stuff is painted. You get to see the gray resin or whatever, but the quality of the pictures are fucking crispy as hell. The lighting is right, so you get to see the depth of the model, and you get to see the high quality sculpting and the great job that model looks like without paint. So I don't think it's necessary to showcase how cool of a model you made is. I don't believe that. However, where I think it's valuable is when we start integrating social media to this. I think that when a new model drops and you have an amazing paint job by an amazing painter, and that's then shared across social media, it gets more eyes on your awesome new model as opposed to the gray resin version of it. And so you're helping your business sell more models by getting more eyes on this. So I do think it aids there. However, like when I go to a convention and you're looking at all the models on display and the boxes of them, I don't know that the actual box art paint job on the physical product aids at all for me in deciding whether or not to buy it.
Yeah. I think that was actually the original question that I forgot to answer is, do you think having a painted box art impacts people's decision to really buy a miniature? And I can only speak for myself personally because I don't actually know what like the statistics would say, but like personally, I think that a painted version of a model kind of gets my creative wheelhouse spinning better than a resin one. But I totally understand the idea that like having it not be painted like doesn't determine anything for you creatively, and so you have the ability to go in many different directions. And the moment you see like a model painted in a certain way, like you feel like you have to go in that way. But I don't know, like for me, maybe it's just like someone else's creative interpretation like helps me to like form the basis of like of my creative idea and what it will be. And so, because like whenever I try to do anything, pretty much any kind of creative thing in life, it always starts with looking up inspiration first. Like even if like I want to like decorate my living room, like I'm going to go and look at like different people's living rooms and see like, okay, I like this thing they did here. How do I apply it to my personal situation? And it never ends up in me copying anyone, but it always ends up in me taking someone's idea and reinterpreting it for my specific situation. And so I feel like I like to see box arts that helps me begin the process of painting something.
You just look at all the stills from the Hobbit holes from Lord of the Rings. That's where you grab all your inspiration from.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
Yeah. I think that would be sweet, actually. You went down to your basement and it just looked like a Hobbit hole with all those arches and stone floor. And...
Yeah, like 3 feet in height as well. Like we're just crouching to get around.
Yes. Yeah, every time you go through a threshold, you've got to duck like Gandalf. Otherwise, you can't get through.
Yeah.
You can't get through. Do I think the second part of this question, that's a good point you brought up again. Do you think it influences people to buy a model? Going back to what I said, you'll get more people to buy the model if more people are exposed to it, more people see it, and a painted version online through social media will get more eyes on it, so more people will buy it. However, I don't necessarily think that's a one-to-one equation that means the paint job is what got people to buy it. It's more that they saw the model exists. Which leads into our second question here. Do you ever feel deterred from buying a model because of amazing box art, i.e. the vision for the model feels fully realized already? And I've felt this, and I think I've talked about this in the podcast before. That's exactly how I feel. If I see an Eric Swinson paint job or whomever paint job for the release of this model, 2 things happen. 1, I'm feeling out the story and seeing this amazing work that artist realized. And then I'm in that world and I start to see that model and that paint job as one thing. And therefore, my own narrow scope of things are, that's the coolest or the best or the most unique way or most interesting way to paint this. And I feel it's 1, already been realized, and 2, I don't know if I can live up to that execution level. So anything I paint, I will reference, others will reference to that, and it will always fall short, which deters me from even wanting to buy it in the first place.
Yeah. I think the natural hipster in me maybe sees it as a challenge. You know, if someone has a painted version of something, not to paint it better necessarily, but to like have my own unique interpretation of it. It's like, okay, I can also do this. I feel like there are certain times though when seeing a painted box art is kind of just like a fatality, you know. It's like I can't live up to this. And I think it very often happens when someone paints hyper realistic stuff. So like Kirill Kanaev, or maybe like Michael Pisarski. Like when I see those paint jobs, like those are some part of me is discouraged from painting it. But also very often I feel like those guys paint models that I'm not gonna paint like most often. And so like they're kind of like, you know, working on things that I'm never gonna work on in the first place. So it's not that big of a deal. But those guys definitely are a little discouraging for me for sure.
Right. Yeah, I almost feel like I want a breathing room of show me the brand new model unpainted. Let me get excited. Let my creativity and my vision happen. And then some small amount of time passes and I can see the amazing painted version of it. And so I've already started my own creative process and I buy into the idea of potentially purchasing this model to realize that creative process instead of showing me first a painted end version of it, because that feels, to me anyway, it feels like it distorts my creativity, or it kind of stunts my creativity of my own take on it, because I don't get to realize that. And even if I see the unpainted version later, my brain defaults to the way how XYZ painted it already, you know. And so it's like, that's just my personal take of like, I want to see it as a blank canvas first.
Okay.
And that would help me want to purchase and then see the capabilities of what it's possible to be created with an amazing artist for the box art.
Very reasonable. Very reasonable. Okay, what's the next part of the question? Do you ever feel... No, wait, the other one. Do you think the impact of a box art shifts when you go from display to game miniatures? This actually... So we've kind of answered a question like this in the past before, but this particular... like angle of the question I think is very unique. It's like, does any part of this question change for you when thinking about a display model or a gaming model? Because like we all know about GW. GW has box arts on every single one of their products basically, and they're quality paint jobs that for a lot of people are unattainable in skill level, or at least currently unattainable. And so do we care about that? And it's like, I feel like everyone has just accepted the fact that GW products come with box arts, and like that's just okay. That's like a reality that we kind of live in. And so it's like somehow different than display models. Because like in my head, they do feel different. I feel like gaming models having a box art doesn't really impact me as much as maybe having a display model with a box art would.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's because I totally agree with you. And this is why this question is so interesting, is this third part. I completely agree, because the way I look at, example, Games Workshop box art is they are vanilla ice cream. They are probably the best vanilla ice cream on the planet, or one of the best vanilla ice creams on the planet, in that how they paint the models is not exciting, doesn't shake the boat at any point. There is no creative vision involved. There is nothing that tells you the artist that painted it and their style involved. However, it is still amazing vanilla ice cream. So I feel like it's so much easier to see a box of Space Wolves painted by the Heavy Metal team to the nth degree and look amazing, that it's almost like I see how awesome they can look, but there's no vision in this and there's no personality in it. And it's so much easier for me to push what I want to do to make it unique, to make it different than just showcasing what their models look like on the box.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes I totally get what you're saying when you're thinking about average run-of-the-mill units, but I believe that sometimes heavy metal painters do get to flex a little bit when they paint like one-off characters like Neferata or something like that, like especially a big figure, that basically is a display model for them that they're spending multiple hours on,
Yeah, there is, but in terms of like working with all these knobs and dials that we can turn and we have access to in miniature painting, they turn, even when they're flexing, they turn very few of those knobs. They are still strictly, basically working with a layer paint consistency and very little color transitions and no interesting, lighting situations and no deviation from this is what this faction's colors are all the time. So, and part of that is kind of like the way Games Workshop has integrated this into their ecosystem is these standard color schemes and deviations of color schemes. So this is the way the color scheme for Space Wolves work. However, there are secondary colors or offshoots of the Space Wolf army that we don't show in our box arts, but you can figure out how to utilize those different colors in different ways to make them your own and still make them, Space Wolves. So, that's an interesting approach that they take to it that I don't think we typically think about too much when we look at their official color schemes and box arts, that like, it feels like it's done with purpose of it allows you to see how awesome these models are, but it doesn't impede your take on your making them your own when you buy them. It would be interesting if like that approach, we would see that approach from a bust company or a 54-72 millimeter display miniature company. If they did that approach, how that would be received or how that would affect things. I'm curious.
Yeah. It's actually, I wonder if I know GW obviously intentionally uses the same style across all their products to have a consistent portfolio and have the website look consistent and all the box arts look kind of the same too. But I wonder if also part of that decision was inspired by what you're saying. It's like we want to show you a direction to go in without like indicating too much about the figure creatively, and so it's like here is the vanilla interpretation. Now you can add on sprinkles, you can go chocolate, you can do whatever you want. I wonder if that's like a thing they actively thought about doing. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. That it seems like you're giving them an awful lot of credit if I say yes to that. And I don't think so. I think this is kind of like grandfathered in, right? Okay. From the way that they originally showcased their models, 80s and 90s, when that basic clean style was just the only way that it was done. And they've evolved it very minimally over the years, but it's upgraded year over year, but to still be that kind of a blank canvas style of painting to let you just showcase the model. Because after all, they are selling you the models for the game, and they don't want anything to distract from that, including artistic take or individual take on the paint jobs on the box or on the Warhammer community article. They want the model to be the showcase, not the paint job. But the paint job's got to make the model look good. So that's that fine line that they walk.
Yeah. I think the last thing that I just thought of that I'll mention about this question and this third part of this question is that I think the audiences, the customers for gaming figures and for display models are different. Even though it's the exact same hobby, the kind of painter who's going to buy a display model is buying it for the ability to creatively express something new and fresh on that model. Whereas someone who's looking to play Age of Sigmar or 40K, some of them might just want to play the game, and they might want to play the game with painted models, but they don't care to come up with a custom scheme, a unique faction, and all of this stuff. And so having a painted box art just gives you that roadmap. I'm like, here, just paint your Spider Riders like this. Like, you don't need to come up with your own scheme. Just do it how we do it in whatever technique and style you want to do it. But for a display model, there isn't that. There's no army to put this bust into. Like, the whole point of it is to creatively interpret it. So the customers and their desires are different, their goals.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good take. Like, this one-off bust of a vampire does not have to live in anything else you've ever created or anything else you ever will create. Right. Let it tell its own story just in and of itself, and let you try to create your own vision in and of itself. And so there's a big dichotomy there between that and this being just a part of a larger thing. This needs to fit in with not only with this army, but within the universe of the 40K. And how does all of those puzzle pieces need to all fit together? And in order to do that, we have to, just like talking about game rules earlier, we have to simplify at the micro so it doesn't get all out of fucking whack by the time we get up to the macro. Yeah. That's the way I'm kind of feeling about it. And but that said, like, I can look at the box art of a Games Workshop model, and I feel like it's so much easier for me to see through the box art painted model to vision my own way, my own take on it, much easier than looking at the box art of a display model. I don't know why. It's just the way that they approach it. I can almost like pull all the colors away and just look at the details, the sculpt, the pose, all those things in an interesting way. It's almost like it's vanilla ice cream enough that it aids, but it doesn't detract. And that's really interesting. I just think that the hiring, just think about this. Think about if they hired, the box art artists of the world to do the box arts for every different Games Workshop box launch.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
What would that be like? It would just be a hot mess. Yeah. Wouldn't it?
Right, yeah. That's why I mentioned earlier they want to have all their products look consistent on their boxes and on their website. So that makes sense. But maybe it's because you just have so much experience looking at GW figures and making your own creative choices. Like, you do that very often. So maybe it's just practice.
That's true. It's just sheer number of repetition.
Maybe.
How many Games Workshop launches are there in a given month? Previews. It's got to be, let's say, give or take 10 new kits.
Really? Is it 10?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like every other week there's a new, like the pre-order window is 2 weeks from showcase and pre-order window opens, and then they typically do that twice a month. So then when these are now up for pre-order, they're also previewing the next ones, and it's give or take 5. You add in when they have big events, when they have big reveals, we have whatever, and then that bloats the number for that month, and there's probably less. So yeah, I would say it's 10 kits a month. It's probably more than that, but it's on the safe side, say 10. You expose yourself to that enough times, you're used to it, and you're used to the painting style over and over again. Even if it's painted different colors this time, it's still predictable, and you see that enough times, you can kind of force yourself to unsee it. But when there's that new vampire bust, and you're adding another big variable of an entirely new scene model, and the artist's very distinct style and take on it, and again, I get enveloped in the story they're telling so much more visually that it's harder for me to unsee that. It almost becomes those things are connected, and they're easier for me to disconnect with something like Games Workshop.
Yeah.
And other games too. Like, we were looking at the Corvus Belli models earlier and stuff, and like I looking at the back of the box of the Sand Trap kit, and I can look at all their JSA models, and I could feel like I can do that myself with these too, and with much less exposure. And maybe it's just because it's the scale in a similar kind of sci-fi universe that the exposure to doing that over the years with Games Workshop allows me to do it easier with other games too.
Yeah. Possibly. Interesting question. Cool conversation. Let's go on to the next question from Dun Jin, and that is, why is metallic gold so god awful? And why is it? And is it why people move towards NMM to not have to deal with it? Okay, so 2 questions.
Oh, this is a loaded one, Dun. We got to walk precariously over this minefield that you've laid before us. I think historically, metallic paints are one of the more difficult animals to try to figure out for our hobby. Also for traditional arts, there is not metallic paints used very often. It's not historically a traditional thing that's used, metallic paints. So it's more of a crafting thing. And for crafting, which is where a lot of the miniature paints had started from, the quality of those has been shitty, because if you're just like sponge painting on your wood to put something on your wall, it didn't need to look amazing. So it's had to come a long ways, and it's been a rough go. And gold particularly, any colored metallics particularly, are more difficult than gradations of silver, right? Because you have to not only get the shine correct, but you have to get the tone correct. And it feels like that's been very difficult to achieve. And us not being curtain engineers or paint engineers, we don't know the reasons behind that specifically, but it's felt like so many of the metallic golds over the years, they had one of 2 things wrong. They covered like shit, and the metallic flakes were too big, and it just looked cheesy and not good, or so the technology wasn't there. Or 2, the technology was there. Prime example, Vallejo metal color, but the tone of the golds were just bad. They didn't feel warm enough. They didn't feel punchy enough. They didn't feel like gold. They just felt like a shitty bronze or something. So it felt like it was been very difficult over time to get both of those lined up correctly. That said, some of the newer stuff is much better than it used to be.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it briefly, but the size of the pigment, I think, has been a huge problem for so many brands. Because when you look at metal, there is not, other than like chips and wear and like rust and stuff in the metal, you don't see any stoppages. There's no tiny little pigments. It's one smooth layer of continuous reflective material. And of course, we're painting miniatures, right? And so to have these larger pigments be visible on the figure so the metallic looks sparkly instead of looking like one continuous surface of shiny metal, that immediately sends a signal to your brand that this is not metal. This is like metal sprinkles or like whatever it is. Right. So I think that's a huge problem that we solved.
You put sparkles all over everything.
Right, yeah.
I say that like the technology is just now feeling like we're getting there and creating an industry standard that I think all companies are going to have to live up to. I'm going to show you examples here, and this is not a shill. I'm not paid by this company, but this is the P3 Wave 2. They have something called Pure Metallics, and this is their this is their gold and their copper. Extremely vibrant and shiny, and that same really the gold with the copper with a really orange color, and then the gold, it actually showing up on my camera much less saturated, but that really smooth consistency, really fine aluminum flakes. And that, I think, was been the issue prior, is that using the mica flakes was the cheap option, and it was very expensive to do something more. But now that enough have entered the realm of miniature paints to show how much better they are, it's like you've got to conform, or your metallic paints aren't going to be used. Yeah. So yeah, these are phenomenal. But so there's stuff that's out there or getting out there. Do not immediately lose hope. The second part of this question, is that why people went to NMM, Scott?
Yeah, I think they are. Maybe there are some people out there that have gone to NMM due to frustration. Maybe you're one of those painters. But I don't think that's really the main reason why people do NMM. It's an exciting new technique to explore, like wet blending, like feathering, like OSL. Like there's a bunch of tools out there in the Mini Painter toolkit that are interesting to explore and learn, and it's one of them. Also, probably the bigger reason is because of the inherent shininess of TMM paint. You'll get real life specular highlights, areas where the light hits your model, reflects into the observer's face, that move around as the model moves around. And for a lot of painters, they want to have the ultimate control over a paint job, and you don't get that from shiny metallic paints. You can to a certain degree, but not as much as using matte paint. And so the idea with NMM being that you can use yellows, browns, oranges, whites, pale yellows to create gold, as opposed to using shiny paint, and it looks exactly as it's supposed to look in a particular given angle, a couple different angles, and it doesn't move around. And so it's a demonstration, one, of your understanding of light. It's a fun exploration of a new topic, and also personally for me, it just looks, when it's executed well, it just looks so much better. And also the last thing is, people will say in the comments, undoubtedly, that you can achieve an NMM-like effect with TMM just following the same tenets of NMM. And that is partially true. But the problem also is that most TMM paint that's naturally shiny, is difficult to work with, because glossier paint, just in general, is less tactile and sticks down less than matte paint does, which just makes it difficult to work with. The more you put TMM onto a model, the glossier and more slippery it gets, and the harder it is to put down further and further layers of paint. Whereas with matte paint, you're creating like this lattice of like nice tactile paint that's like microscopically rough, and it makes it easy to glaze on, it makes it easy to wet blend on, it makes it easy to paint on, just bar none. And so just from my painting perspective, if I'm going to labor over a piece of armor for an hour, it's easier to do that with matte paints.
Yeah, that's a really important point here, is until you've tried to achieve an NMM look with TMM paint, it's hard to grasp how difficult it is to work in subtleties with TMM paint. Because glazing with it, or like, oh, I want to slightly bring back the shine, or pull up the shine to the shiniest part, so it's like slightly more shiny, and then super shiny at the edge. It doesn't really work that way, because it's either there or it's not. So then you just have to work with matte paint and layers of that over top of the metallic paint to control and harness that shine. And absolutely it's doable, and absolutely it can look great. But what you're actually doing then is you're painting NMM. You are just doing it with a TMM paint foundation, really, is what you're doing. So, yeah, TMM looks amazing for, again, back to the typical GW box art style, where it's like you're in a universal lighting situation where there's no heavy shadows, where there's no directional light. It is just kind of like you're living in a universal dome where there's LEDs entirely wrapped around the dome.
Yeah.
And it looks great for that. But the moment you want to add any drama through lighting in your miniature painting, then the TMM looks off, because you have to control that angle of lighting on the metallic surfaces, just as you have them over every other surface. Also, in the real world, we aren't ever in this universally lit dome. So while that can still look really good, especially for tabletop painting, the second you try something that's anything other than that, then you are going to have to rework the fighting with the metallics, because they're going to feel off, because they don't hold that consistency with lighting with everything else. And then you naturally go to, okay, if I want to control that, that's where NMM comes in. I personally haven't felt like, working with TMM gold or whatever TMM paint pisses me off, so that's why I go to NMM paint. That's not been my path to it. But I could see where, if you are having that specific frustration, where that would be, anytime you're trying a new technique or you're messing around with something for the first time, or you want to expand your skills and your techniques, any excuse you have that's your own experience to try that is valid, and that's a good reason to try something new. Whatever reason you have to try something new, anytime you get a new experience with something new, that is aiding you, even though it's rough the first number of times, even though you get frustrated with it, even though there's that learning curve, over time, that's going to aid you. So if that's your reason, dun de Jin, is the D is silent? Dun.
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
But then that is a good valid reason. So go for it if that's your reason.
So maybe we can end this question by us both saying what kinds of gold paints and ranges that we like, and maybe Dunn will have a better time using those. Personally, whenever I need gold, I will use the Scale 75 Alchemy range. That is Necro Gold, Peridot Alchemy, and then a third one that's even brighter. I like them because of their hue, but also for me, the gold paint works out pretty well. There's probably ones that have better, smaller grains than them, but those are the ones that I have that seem to work whenever I go to them, so I just have settled on that.
Yeah, the Scale 75 ones, the only issue I have with their golds is that like their Dwarven Gold and Elven Gold, which are like their middle, right, are not a nice warm gold. And I'm always looking for a nice warm gold, and they have a nice range. I think that Necro Gold is one of my favorite metallic paints. Nice. I love that color.
Nice.
I just like, I want to get that nice warm gold. And Dwarven Gold is not quite right. And Elven Gold is a highlight or it's a colder gold. So that middle tone is what I struggle with. Like I said, my favorite, and it's not going to help you right now because you're not going to get yours in the mail if you back it until like 6 to 12 months from now. Probably 6 to 9 months from now is the new Pure Gold by P3. I also like the Speed Paint metallics a lot, and their golds in there are really solid. So that's trying out the Speed Paint warm gold from there. I don't make it work like a speed paint. It's really thin like a speed paint, but it's got a good opacity, and it's got the really, really fine flakes. Because if you're going to have a speed or contrast paint that's a metallic, it's got to be extremely finely ground, and those are. So that would be my other recommendation.
Okay. I have two things I want to mention. You had a sound effect for a warm gold. Do you have a similar sound effect for Rhinoxide? Just like a cough of a wheezy old man. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a history in that sound, right? Like this Rhinox hide has seen some shit, and it's always there for you when you need it the most.
Okay.
It may not be. It's reliable. It may be a crotchety old man, but it's this. Like I'm there.
All right.
I'm there.
All right. Okay, I see the logic there. And also, the other thing I wanted to mention was I have also used Speed Paint Gold. I used it on a Twitch stream one time because I heard the same thing from a lot of people, that it was really great. And I had a fucking awful experience with it.
Really?
So your mileage may vary, Dunn. Some people like it. A lot of people like it. But when I used it, I was like, I don't get it. It doesn't make... Because I thought the opacity was awful. And it's like, when I use my metallic paints, which are mostly AK and Scale 75, I don't have to do a bazillion layers of coats. I don't know how many layers of coats I had to do. But it was definitely... They were definitely less opaque than those paints. And immediately when I was using it, I was like, I don't get it. Like, it made no sense to me. And maybe I just didn't try it long enough. But that was just my particular experience.
It depends on what you have underneath it. They are much more influenced by, you want it to be either a black or like a dark brown underneath it. Like you want that Rhinox hide first. And then you put it on there and like... Yes, but it does have a level of opacity that's not as strong, so you might have to do 2 or 3 coats.
Okay, maybe that was the issue.
Yeah. If you're impatient or you're just doing like 1 coat pass, it's gonna knock it out. It is not. It's not.
That's fair. All right, on to our last question from Logan Harris. How did y'all bridge the gap and handle the frustration of understanding/knowing advanced techniques but being able to replicate them yet? For example, I watch y'all and understand the technique you are using and what I'm supposed to do, but I haven't established the muscle memory to do the same thing yet.
Logan, this might be the best question we've ever gotten through the Patreon.
Okay.
This is something that is like the core to our channels existing. Like, it is so rough to say, I could watch you do it, totally understand, copy that. I could regurgitate it back to you and even understand the premise in the steps to do so. But it still doesn't look like yours, Scott. Why? What's the, that level of like frustration or whatever. So I'm curious your take on this.
Yeah. I think what it comes down to is just how many different people there are in the world and what really makes things click for them. Because you'll get some people who will watch an educational video and it'll just work. Like something, I'm not saying they just get a technique immediately and they can go and do it immediately. But like there was some mental hurdle that no one put words to yet, and this video put words to it. And now that they see this narrow path forward, now they know what to do. And for other people that don't just like have that opportunity, that kind of like light bulb moment, they have to figure it out for themselves. And so the difficult answer to this question is that it comes from reps. But it's not just like doing a thing mindlessly. It's like doing a thing like a scientist. You try something and you observe what went wrong or what went right, and then you modify it very slightly, and then you try it again. So let's take an example. Let's take wet blending, right? I'm trying wet blending out. I'm using paint straight out of the bottle, okay? All right, so it's thick paint. It's not thinned. How does that work out for me? Okay, is it good? Is it bad? All right, now let's try to thin one of the paints that I'm going to mix into the paint, the second one I use. So I base coat with a thick one. Now I use a thin one for the second color that I'm mixing in. Okay, let's try both of them being thin. Let's try a lot of paint. Let's try a little paint. Let's try a matte paint. Let's try a satin paint. So like maybe you're not going to be as much of a freak as I am and like go to the extent of trying all these little tiny microscopic tests. But those are just very basic examples of like, I'm going to make one small change and see what happens. And then at some point, you're going to get a result that you like, and it's going to like click for you. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what works for me. And that's just the thing the video maker or the article writer just didn't happen to go over, because that wasn't necessary for them, for the technique to click for them, but it was for you. So it's part exploration, and it's part just we're all unique human beings and approach things differently, kind of.
Yeah, that's as well put, Scott.
Thank you.
I think there's a twofold goal to this that we don't typically talk about in the videos, that I think it's really valuable to kind of grasp and keep in the back of your mind when you are learning something new, when you are experimenting and you are watching a video to help you get there. The first one is that the whole point of the first watch through is to understand it's not as complex as you would have thought, to make it approachable enough for you to attempt. So Scott doing a video on wet blending or showcasing wet blending in a video that's about something else is about giving you enough of a fish for you to eat. And that means that for you to attempt it and to realize, okay, at its core, this is not as difficult as I thought it was going to be, or it is not as step intensive as I, maybe was overwhelmed to even approach. Or it's exposing me to this opportunity in a way that I never thought about before or hadn't considered, and I see the result is really cool, and he didn't make it seem very difficult to do. So that was the first exposure to this video, this first attempt to get you to attempt it. And that, if you do try it yourself, Scott has done his job, and he's helped you as an artist, try new things. That is always the goal for these videos, is to get more people to try new things, to expand your horizons and to expand your ceiling as a painter. Now, you sit down at the table after watching Scott's video and saying, aha, this is not that bad, I can do it. And you put brush to paint, you follow the same steps that Scott did. You look at your model 10 minutes later after doing it and you're like, what the fuck? This does not look like Scott's. This was not as simple as I thought it was going to be. Why does mine not look good like Scott's does? Okay. Now, the rubber has met the road, and now what's happened? I encourage you to go back and watch that same video again of Scott's a second time after having tried it yourself, because this gives Scott's 2 views on his video, which is very important. Okay. And then when you re-watch Scott's video, that small section, it could be a 2-minute section of wet blending on his video. Now that you've attempted it, when you re-watch it, you will be like you're watching it for the very first time, because the things that you pick up on that second watch through after having attempted it yourself will totally be open to your eyes. The things that you pay attention to, the things that you take away are totally new now because you've attempted it in real life. And that back and forth is so valuable to you learning, having access to this video media that you can re-reference. And you'll realize that it's not just the science of the steps. It's here is the thickness of the paint. Here is the steps that I take to apply it. Here is the mixing of them together, the back and forth. But there is the next level, which is the artistry, the intangible, the feel. I often refer to feel. And it is damn near impossible for us to put into words in a succinct manner what feel means and how it applies to this technique. But only through back and forth and understanding what is the pressure of the paintbrush when I apply it for this part. How does the pressure change as I swish it into that first color? And then how does that pressure need to change when I pull the color back? And how did me using the brush in these less tangible ways actually get to the final outcome? If Scott were to turn his 2-minute video into explaining in depth every single aspect of that feel, that's a 2-hour video. And ain't no one gonna watch that fucking video, okay? So Scott can't do this as a job no more if he does that every time. And the amount of research, the amount of script writing, the amount of re-editing, the amount of everything to get from that 2-minute section to that 2-hour section is so intensive that's not typically what YouTube kind of values.
Sure.
So, and that doesn't mean that you're only going to learn from a 2-hour Patreon only version of that video. What the point of that 2-minute video is, and what I actually think it's more valuable for your individual learning is the fact that it gets you a bite-sized snippet, and then you act, and then you return and rewatch, and then you act. And so your education is as much about the attempting and the reattempting, and you're growing what works for you as it is watching the video, and now I immediately know how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I appreciate you using me as a kind of like a metaphor the entire time. That was wonderful. But I agree.
I need everyone to watch Scott's videos 5 times each.
Please.
That's what I need.
I need it. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't just say that as a joke. There's legitimately everything that I'm learning from other painters on YouTube is doing exactly that. That's what I've done over the years, and that's what's really helped me is attempting yourself and then revisiting. You'll pick up new intricacies every time in the words that Scott said. That sentence didn't mean as much to me the first time, or I thought it meant this and it made sense to me there. But then after I tried it and then I listened to it again, it's unlocked something different. Or watching the footage he shows, I see something I didn't see before. And that's really, not only is that how you level it up, but that's actually really satisfying to feel I'm unlocking the Da Vinci Code here by redoing it,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, a lot of people rewatch movies, reread books, rewatch all kinds of media, and they'll discover things they hadn't the first time. So it makes sense that the same would be true for educational content as well, even more so for educational content, right? Because there's something to be learned and taken from everything you see in a video, especially because there are things, like you just said, that go uncommunicated, like how a brush is held, how it's, how it's painted on the model, etc. Any number of things.
Yeah, there's so many variables involved, and each of those variables do not need to work for you the same way that they work for me. So the biggest goal is that we want you to tear down as many of those roadblocks as possible for you to feel confident in attempting, because only will you find out what works for you through attempting multiple attempts. And so the way that any miniature painter does any given technique is not the only way. It is not the right way or the wrong way. It is the way that they have found that works for them. And most of us learn through doing, right? So even if you are born with the perfect skill set to be LeBron James, you are not LeBron James the first time you play basketball. You have to just do more and more attempts to get better at that and find out what works for you. And that's how it works.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, great question. Thank you for all the questions, everyone in this podcast. They were awesome. We always like to answer like some of your deeper, interesting questions. It's also just good just to like kind of like see what you guys are thinking about and like what you're curious about at the moment. Kind of like, not necessarily touch grass, but kind of touch base with our community in a sense to kind of see like what the kind of current modern problems are.
Yeah, because so often when we're making our own videos or when we're coming up with topics for TUP, we're in our own headspace, or what's on top of mind for us. What things have we been dealing with lately? What things do we find interesting? What things do we think you would find valuable? But you straight up telling us is much better.
Yeah, that works. It's a lot faster,
Yeah, so if you are a goody peepee that is a member of the Patreon, whether it's you think it's a stupid question, whether you think it's an easy question, whether you think it is a weird question, or it's something that you've been struggling with for a long time, there is a spot on the Patreon where you can submit your questions. It goes right to a spreadsheet for us that we get to review all those. And so you can have your questions on here. And it's a reminder, again, for being part of the Patreon, you get to have access to that. And you can have your questions answered live here on a TUP episode. So thank you for your support, everyone that utilizes that.
Welcome to the end of the podcast. Thank you so long. Thank you so long.
Thank you so long.
I'm ruined. Okay. Thank you so much for hanging out all the way to the end of this virtual version of Trapped Under Plastic. We want to shout out to our guest, Argus. Shout out, Argus.
He just gave me a big slobbery kiss. It's his favorite. One of his favorite pastimes is to give big smoochies. So if you ever come over to my house, you're going to get a big slobbery smoochie from Argus, whether you like it or not.
I'm down. If you guys want to support the podcast, there's a number of ways in which you can do that. All things linked down in the show notes or description below, depending on where you are watching or listening to the podcast. I mentioned the Patreon already. There is also a way to get merch from us down there as well. T-shirts, sweatpants, hoodies, fun mugs with a variety of Trapped Under Plastic logos on them. If you don't have cash to spend, that's okay too. You can just share our podcast with your nerd friends. Give us a review wherever you're listening to podcasts. All those ways are fantastic ways to support the podcast without spending your own dollars and keeping us afloat.
I love that as you're talking, your head slightly moves just a little bit like it's supposed to, but your camera is like, it's trying to keep the same like focal distance. So it's like, it like slowly goes in and out as you're talking. And now it's like, oh yeah, it's too far away to be in focus, but it's still zooming in. Yeah, I love it.
I love it too.
It's like, it's like mustache cam. It's always got to be like center of the clip is right on that mustache.
Yeah,
it's got to always find the mustache. Yeah. It's the Where's Waldo of mustaches. It's just finding the mustache no matter where it is. All right. I think Argus is ready for his lunch, and I'm ready for my lunch. Scott, are you ready for your lunch?
I am.
No matter what time it is, no matter where you are, goody peepees, we hope that you stop whatever you're doing right fucking now and you get some lunch. Get them nibbles. That's what Argus wants right now. He wants some nibbles. You want some nibbles? Go get some nibbles. Until the next time, we'll catch you on the
Flippity Flop.